Now, over in Southeast Asia, Thailand looks set to face yet another period of uncertainty. This after its Prime Minister was suspended by the country's constitutional court. Thai Prime Minister Prayut chan-ocha's suspension will be upheld until the court comes to a verdict, which local media has reported could come by September. Mr Prayut has been suspended from his official duties pending the result of a legal review of his 8-year term. This after a petition from opposition lawmakers was submitted. Deputy Prime Minister Prawit Wongsuwan will serve as caretaker PM in the interim. Joining us now to tell us more about what is happening over in Bangkok is Thailand correspondent Tan Tam Mei. Thanks for joining us, Tam Mei. So do we actually expect a new Thai PM then? What are the courts likely to do, and does Mr Prayut have a case at all?
Yeah, hi Suan. It's hard to say if we can expect a new Thai PM. It really depends on the court's verdict. And if they do decide that Mr Prayut has breached the 8-year limit, there will be a process that is triggered, where Parliament has to choose a new PM from an existing list of nominees that they had already put up in the 2019 elections. But we have to bear in mind that Mr Prayut's coalition government has the majority of seats in Parliament, so it should be relatively easy for them to sway the vote if they do. And I think another thing we need to consider is that national elections are coming soon. They're expected by early 2023. So if a new PM is elected soon after this case, he or she could be somewhat of a temporary thing because it will just be for 6 months. So I'm not too sure, if we can expect a new Thai PM coming, and just a lot of factors, Yeah, and I think for one, people are not raising their hopes for a verdict that is unfavorable for Mr Prayut, because in the past, critics have always labeled this constitutional court as typically leaning towards the conservative establishment, which is people like military. And I think for this, it's also interesting to note that the 9 court judge, all of them found that there was a valid case to be investigated. So that's a bit of an unusual thing. And actually 5 of the 9 decided to suspend Mr Prayut immediately. So I think some political analysts do say that this part is a bit of a surprise. And it does pique some interest as to whether or not this does portend to anything about the eventual verdict. Will there be a slim majority that decides that he has actually breached this tenure limit? But then again, all this is speculation on our part. And I think at the heart of this issue, the problem really is that the Constitution, established in 2017, doesn't say when this countdown starts. And most of Mr Prayut's critics and even many legal scholars have interpreted this start date for his tenure as 2014. And they say that the compelling argument is that is the most simple or layman way to read this particular section. And there are other documents as well that they reference that say actually do indicate there is some continuity in terms of things that happened before the 2017 Constitution and after the 2017 Constitution. But then there are 2 other ways of interpreting this 8-year tenure. And some legal experts say it's also fair to say that Mr Prayut's term starts in 2017, which is when the Constitution was established. That means he has 2 more years left on his tenure. But then there are some questions about this, what do you consider the years from 2014 to 2017 when he was PM? Are they invalid? Do his orders still stand? There's quite a lot of questions still. And there's another more generous interpretation that says that his term only started in 2019, because that was when he was elected in as the civilian PM under this 2017 Constitution. So that will give him 5 more years on the cards. So there are various ways of interpreting it, and legal scholars have also admitted it's a bit of a, open-ended thing because it does not state the exact terms, and it really depends on how the courts interpret it.
So outside of the courts, Thailand has had a rocky few years politically. Let's talk about public sentiment. Are the Thais divided in opinion, or is there a consensus on the ground? How have the Thais reacted so far?
So the immediate reaction after the court's announcement yesterday was many pro-democracy and government opposition did celebrate. There were lots of positive messages, even speeches, and even on social media. But they soon realized that the suspension is only temporary, and the caretaker PM, Mr Prayut, is actually a close ally of Mr Prayut, and he himself is a fellow military man, and he will be taking over. So realistically, it's the same group of people running the country, and they will more or less act in the same vein. For the Thai administration, it probably wants to keep it that way, doesn't want to shake the boat, because Thailand has some big meetings coming up, some big important events, including the APEC meeting in November, which everyone, including all levels of government, have been preparing for. So it's in their interest to keep things status quo. And for the anti-Prayut camp, I think they did study the way the court's decision, and many of them still headed out to protest after news yesterday, as they realized things are more or less the same. It's the same group of leaders, and I have to say, unfortunately, the demonstrators have not been able to get the same mass that they had pre-COVID. But the small groups that have started going onto the street, even from Sunday, they are small groups, but they are very passionate, and they have been very sustained in terms of their protests. Some have even stayed overnight at the areas that they are at. And I think for this case, the biggest winners at the end of the day are the opposition lawmakers, specifically the main opposition party called Per Thai. They were the ones who filed the petition to the court and triggered this whole case. And whatever the court's ruling will be, this will become an election issue, and I'm sure Per Thai will use it, in their platform, because if Mr Prayut is removed permanently based on what the courts decide, this will signal a weakened coalition government. And if the courts decide to restore Mr Prayut to the post, this will only support Per Thai's narrative of a biased government system. So at the end of the day, Thailand's politics, is only made more complicated because of what happened. The same people are still in charge, but there's just a bit of a shuffling of the leaders who are in charge. So it's still colorful at the end of the day.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel.
And hit the bell icon to be notified of new videos.